and welcome to our webinar tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in to learn some tips and tricks about the design world. I'm Jenny from Nasco Education, and I'm really excited to welcome Cheryl Howard for joining us today. A couple logistics before we really dive into today's topic of design. The first thing that I wanted to say is there is a handout of a lot of different links that Cheryl is going to share today. So if you want that handout, it's much easier than trying to get those tools anywhere else. Download the handout to get the URLs and the tips that she's sharing. So do that during the webinar, or if it's after the webinar and you're watching this recording, feel free to kind of respond to how you got this recording. That email is linked to our engage@nascoeducation.com, and we'd be happy to get you that handout as well. There also, for today's webinar, is a question box. So if you have any questions as we go, please do type your question right into that box. At the end of the webinar today, I will be voicing those questions to Cheryl so she can share some of that expertise, and she certainly has a lot. We also have a certificate that if you are attending today, you'll be getting an automatic email from GoToWebinar about 1 hour after the webinar ends. And also there will be a survey that launches as well. If you can please take that survey, it helps us plan future webinars. For example, this one came about because we were being asked about design webinars. So we hope that you enjoy our webinar today. And without any further ado, I want to officially introduce Cheryl Howard, who is joining us. She is a certified interior designer and has been active in California since 2000. She's an associate member of the American Society for Interior Designers. She has a certification from UCLA in interior design extension courses since 1980, and she has established Cheryl Howard Interiors starting in 1985 and specializes in residential and contract interiors. She also then started an educational program, which some of you might be familiar with. We do sell it through NASCO, and that is called Easy Decorator Systems, and she started that business and that learning platform in 1998. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's so nice to be with you, everybody out there in computer land today. And I wanted just to say that I welcome you, and it's my pleasure to provide you with hopefully some inspiration to bring back to your classes. And that this is, it's wonderful for me to work with NASCO. This is an opportunity it's an exclusive interview, an exclusive video that you won't be able to see anywhere else. And I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello everyone, I'm Cheryl Howard and I'm an interior designer in Los Angeles. And I want to welcome you to Tips and Tools for Turning Your Students into Interior Designers. As you know, knowledge gained inside the classroom, such as space planning, elements of design, history of styles, and color theory, are the building blocks of a formal design education. But it's the skills and strategies learned through experience outside of the classroom that can make or break an interior design project. What do you think your students would answer you if you asked them, what's the most important goal for a successful interior designer? Maybe something like to be on HGTV, or to win awards, or to be in Architectural Digest. Well, sure, every designer dreams of this, but it is not what good interior design is about. A successful designer succeeds when they create interiors that fit the client's needs, taste, comfort level, lifestyle, and desire, all within their budgets. A successful designer has to be a great listener, a great observer, and certainly a bit of a psychologist in order to decipher what clients cannot always put into words. And yes, a successful designer has to be prepared when their most fabulous designs end up on the chopping block, as long as they have pleased their clients. Sad and so disappointing. I've been there so many times myself. So here is my tip number 1 for aspiring designers. Always realize and accept the space is for the client and not for you. Make your client happy and comfortable, and you've done a great job. My second tip is best explained with a story. Something that happened to me early in my career that I will never forget. By referral, I was hired by a wonderful couple to design and furnish their very beautiful and cavernous living room so that they could entertain large gatherings. The project seemed like a dream, fun and creative, and with an unlimited budget. I presented my design ideas to them like this. I always start with a floor plan, a 1/4 inch scale, bird's eye view of the room, dimensioned with all of the pieces in the room dimensioned. This gives the client the ability to see how much furniture is going in the room, where it's placed, what the seating arrangements are like for conversation, and also traffic pattern throughout the room. Very, very important. I also like to color my floor plan. It sort of makes it pop instead of just a boring black and white. So this is the first part of my presentation. And then I get to move on to the fun part, the touchy-feely part, where I just sort of spread out all of the fabrics that I've chosen. The clients can see the palette, they can see the actual fabrics, touch and feel them. This is really cool because it's actually a reversible fabric you can use on either side. I prefer this side. They can see the fiber content of each fabric and really get an idea of how the room is going to look. We're sort of building it from starting with the floor plan to the fabrics, showing the actual samples of stain finishes on the furniture, rug, and then moving on to the actual pieces. These are tear sheets. They have a photograph of the piece and then the dimensions of the pieces. And we can talk about which fabrics are going on which pieces. And it's just like having a story and moving through the story. Of course, relating all of this to the floor plan and the pieces that are on the floor plan, and even a little sketch of the window treatments so they know what that's going to look like, and showing them the fabrics that are proposed for this. And finally, finishing up with some paint colors that go with the palette so that they have an idea of what the walls are going to look like. They were really excited and gave me the go-ahead to order everything. Well, the living room installation day arrived, and I naturally didn't want my clients spoiling their surprise by peeking at the space until it was totally finished, like on HGTV. That required them staying away all day. However, that morning the wife called me saying she was not well and she needed to stay at home. But she promised me that she would remain upstairs all day and wait until her husband came home to see the completed room. Everything moved along great. Truckloads of furniture and accessories and rugs and artwork arrived. Window coverings were being installed. The carpenter was making last-minute tweaks, usual stuff for an installation. But there is always something unexpected, something crazy. Mid-morning, the electrician installing the ceiling lighting encountered a beehive in the attic, and we had a major panic when bees started entering the room through the ceiling opening. Luckily, I had just had a beehive removed from my house, so I called the same guy and he rushed to the house and took care of the problem. All in a day's work. So the living room was looking fantastic. The furniture was beautiful, well made, and comfortable. There were multiple seating arrangements for entertaining, great lighting, window coverings not overwhelming but with good light control, all in the client's chosen color palette. Everything on their wish list. I was certain that they would be super pleased. Just then I noticed out of the corner of my eye the wife, my client, making her way into the not quite finished living room. I guess she was really curious. You've probably seen the grand reveals on HGTV when the clients see their rooms for the first time. and they are overwhelmed with disbelief, with big enthusiastic smiles, profusely thanking the designer, and often with tears of joy. Well, the reaction I got was the total opposite. First, she had an absolutely horrified expression, total disbelief, and not the good kind, followed by stuttering things like, "There's so much furniture, and I didn't know it would be like this." Then came the hyperventilating, and for the finale, a full-blown panic attack, requiring her breathing into a paper bag. The works. After calming down, she slowly retreated upstairs to her bedroom. I was devastated. What had gone wrong? Well, it was obvious. My vision had not been my client's vision. My presentation had been lacking something like this: a beautiful and accurate sketch or rendering that would have allowed my client to climb inside my creative mind. So, my tip number 2, sketches and renderings are a must and should be as beautiful and as accurate as possible to allow for the best visual communication. This is a designer's insurance policy against disappointing clients. When I started out, software had not even been invented, so hand drawings were the only option. I am not the best artist, so I hired an artist to do all my presentation drawings, and this was and is expensive. You may have some students that are very artistic, but probably most are not. And it's important that they are not discouraged from pursuing design, because most designers are not great artists. Today, there are all kinds of software available to the designer. This drawing was created using CAD, or computer-aided design. It has a really realistic photographic quality, but the learning curve to create such an image is steep. And once learned, it still takes loads of time to create, and it's also very expensive. By comparison, this is an example of a software drawing that is easy to do, but very amateurish, not inspiring, and not beautiful. A presentation such as this does not show the designer in the best light, and can actually make the designer look like their work is unprofessional and slipshod. Whatever talented vision the designer may have, it is not shown to any advantage, which is, of course, the goal of the presentation. There is another option that interior designers and students have, a tool that I created over 20 years ago for creating both hand-drawn floor plans and interior elevation perspectives, called the Easy Decorator. This is an example of the Easy Decorator furniture and room planner. It consists of hundreds of drawings done in plan view, bird's eye view, on reusable little stickies. They all have the dimensions on them, and you can literally use it right on top of your floor plan, or comes with a handy washable pen that you can use to draw your floor plan directly onto the grid. Once you get your floor plan the way you like it, you can photocopy it, and then you have all the dimensions on it. Great for client presentations, and everything is reusable. Then moving on to the Easy Decorator design system, this tool consists of thousands of hand-drawn images done in elevation and perspective. So you can set up your elevation, and then in the foreground put in your drawings that are in a perspective view. This is done in half-inch scale as opposed to the floor plan, which is quarter-inch scale. That's industry standard for elevation drawings. Everything is, again, reusable. It's also reversible. You can move it around the room. And once you get the design that you like. You then photocopy it, which would be black and white, and then to kick it up a notch or 2 or 3, you can color it. And this was the final room. It was actually photographed in one of the shelter magazines. This was the presentation drawing, starting with the Easy Decorator design system. Another really cool thing about this is that you can insert your paint colors or stain colors right behind the overlay if you want. If you want to get really interesting, you can have a wood ceiling or a wood beam and show it like that. You can present it like this to a client, right as the layout is like this, or photocopy and color it and present that to the client. I prefer hand-drawn images because when they're done well, they will knock the client's socks off. That's why I created the Easy Decorator. But regardless of whether the drawings are actually drawn by hand with Easy Decorator or created using software, all the options benefit by the addition of color. Watercolors are my favorite. They're quick, easy, and cheap. They come in these little kits. You can buy them with different amounts of colors. You can blend them. They can be shared. They can be used over and over. And you can get the most amazing, professional, high-quality results with just these little kits. And then you buy yourself a set of inexpensive brushes and you can go to town. And as an example with what you can accomplish with just these little inexpensive watercolors, you can take a presentation done with Easy Decorator and you can photocopy it. You want to use, obviously, watercolor paper, but first you photocopy it onto regular paper so that you can adjust the light and darkness of the image. You want to get light lines, faint lines, which are the best for watercoloring. And then once you get it the way you like it, take your final copy onto watercolor paper. And then you're ready to do your watercoloring. This would be the final result. Here's another example of a watercolor done very quickly and easily with sort of a stream of consciousness experimentation going on there. If your printer will accept thick watercolor paper, then that is the best way to go. But if your printer will not accept these thick types of paper, then you can buy watercolor paper in tablets. You can also use vellum for watercoloring, and these do come in tablets, very printer friendly, very thin. And if you photocopy your image onto vellum and watercolor it, you'll get a beautiful result. Another medium that I really like to use is colored pencils. Again, you can buy inexpensive kits. They can be blended and they can be used in addition to watercolor. They can be used together. Here's an example of a layout, floor plan that was done using colored pencils. Here you can see just black and white, it's sort of blah, but when you use the pencils, it really kicks it up a notch. So basically, there are 2 types of client presentation that the designer would do professionally. The first one is the one I prefer. It's the touchy-feely method, as I mentioned before, showing everything in a sort of unconstructed way, laying it out, starting with your 1/4-inch scale floor plan, moving, of course, onto the main attraction, which is the beautiful hand-colored rendering of the room, and then all of the supporting elements, such as your fabrics, your trimming, your photographs, and so forth, like the presentation that I showed you before. Then the second way that a lot of designers prefer is more constructed, and that's with a mood board. Something like this takes a lot of time and effort, but it is very organized. The most important thing about a mood board is that it must have a central image. You have all of the elements that are in the room, the fabrics and the wall coverings and the tones of the furniture. But if you do not have a central image to pull it all together, it's just a hodgepodge. This is very important. Again, I always like to start with a floor plan. And incidentally, this particular colored rendering was done by photocopying onto vellum. This is actually vellum paper and then watercolored. So you have an example of how beautiful this whole construction can be if you don't have watercolor paper and you need to use the vellum. Here are some examples from recent magazines of how designers present their mood boards. A beautiful hand-drawn image in the center with all the supporting elements of fabrics and furnishings surrounding it. Good, interesting photos can be a great substitute for the real, actual samples. But there are ways that you can get some actual samples for your students so that they can practice doing presentations and get a taste of the real thing. Interior design firms and retail stores and paint stores love to get rid of their old and discontinued books of fabrics and wallpapers. I donate mine to a local design school. If this is not possible, then the internet is a fantastic tool. There are gazillions of fabulous websites that students can surf to find all of the images that they would want to use for their presentations. I love and I use these Robert Allen and Kravitz websites all the time. On these sites, the students can browse thousands of fabrics in all patterns and colors, search for specific designs, and then print them out, preferably in color. They can blow them up, they can experiment with the scale, and then they can incorporate the printouts into their presentations or their mood boards. These sites also offer really beautiful furnishings and accessories in all styles. I also use the Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore paint websites all the time. They offer their paint decks for free. You can order them online. You may have to register as a teacher. Each paint color on their decks can be ordered on a heavy paper sheet, either 8.5 by 11 or 3 by 5. And then the students can use these for their presentations. All you have to do is go to their websites and plug in the colors that correspond to the paint decks, and they will send them to you for free. This is a paint deck from Sherwin-Williams. There are hundreds of colors, everything that they offer in their line, all beautifully organized, neutrals and historic colors, pastels, and all you have to do is go online to order them, and they're free. Just order from here. If you want to receive the colors on heavy paper, you just plug the number in online and you can get any color in these wonderful sizes. They're great for the students to use for their presentations and mood boards. Also, all of the stain colors come on this heavy paper. So when you're presenting, you can show the difference between a walnut and a cherry very easily. They're very, very representational of the real thing. Perhaps some of you have heard of the High Point Furniture Market, a fantastic resource. This is a gigantic marketplace, a home furnishings extravaganza held in downtown High Point, North Carolina 2 times a year. There are over 180 buildings with hundreds of showrooms filled with the latest trends in anything and everything, for furnishings, accessories, antiques, fabrics, everything needed for interior design projects. Everyone is there, from the Property Brothers to Joanna Gaines, presenting their newest lines of home furnishings. It's where designers can hobnob with them and each other. There are also wonderful educational seminars, and the influencers are prominently snapping away and putting their finds on social media. Admission is open to the designer and furniture retailer only, but students can actually get the essence of High Point on the internet. There are virtual showrooms, seminars on all types of topics, style spotters, and lots of great stuff here. Your students could spend hours or even days on this site, and they would be in good company because designers from all over the world are doing the same. And here's the High Point website, and as you can see, so many educational links that students can access all year round. I hope to have given you some inspiration for your students. And now I would love to answer any questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I hope that the video showed pretty well for most of you. I appreciate everyone who kind of chimed in and let me know when the video did kick off. That was very good for me to know. And for some reason now I see my webcam isn't working that well. One of those days, I guess. But I did have a couple questions that came in, and so I would like to pose those to you now, Cheryl. So if you have more questions, now is a great time to put that in the box. My first question that came in was, what advice do you have for students who want to be designers? You know, should they go to a specific program, get a certificate? What education do you recommend?
That's a great question, because I'm a firm believer in as much formal education as you can get. And then, of course, the practical is obviously very, very important, being out in the field. There's a lot of 2-year programs and 4-year programs that students can investigate, depending on where they live, what colleges or universities they're going to. There are a lot of universities that offer extension programs, 2- and 4-year programs. So it all depends on what's offered in the programs, and if the student feels that after 2 years or 4 years, after 2 years, they have enough or they want more. It depends on what they're going to learn beyond 2 years. There are a lot of interior designers that have never had any formal education, but it really, really is important, in my view, to have that education. And I think that clients respect that too when they know you've got a degree. As far as certification goes, every state is different. In California, they do have certification for interior designers. It involves a lot of learning about building codes and things like that. It's not the touchy-feely, really fun stuff. But it gives you credibility when especially if you're going after commercial work. Commercial work is sort of a different animal than residential work. A lot of times people get loans based on who they hire and what the credentials of the people they hire are. So it's a little different, and a lot of it depends on whether that student is going to want to do commercial work or residential work. So, but all the states are different as far as certification goes. Licensing is different too. They don't really have licensing per se for interior designers as they do for architects, but they do have certification state by state, and you just have to see what the requirements are for where you live.
Another question that came in was, do you recommend students who want to be interior designers set up their own business, join a firm? What does the job market look like for an incoming designer?
Oh, that's a very good question. Well, I never worked for anybody but myself. That you sort of have to know, what, and if you have contacts and you feel that you have some experience and some education under your belt, then I think by all means, if you feel confident, you can start working with people. If you work for a firm, you're going to have an advantage in that you're going to get all that information from the higher ups and get used to working with their sources and their vendors, which is very important. When you're first starting out, you don't really have the vendors and the go-to people to do all the special stuff that you might want. So it's really an advantage. You can get all that knowledge And then later on, you can go out on your own. And especially if you work for a prestigious firm, it helps, you know, when you do, if you do leave. And then there are a lot of designers that always work for a firm and never go out on their own. So it sort of depends on how they want to work. And, you know, you'll probably make a lot more money if you work independently rather than for a firm that's going to pay you a salary. So there's a lot of things to consider there.
Wonderful. Well, those are the two. Oh, one more just came in. Do you know any good tools for teaching students how to scale rooms and furniture?
How to scale what? Rooms?
Scale rooms and furniture.
Okay. To scale the furniture. Well, you mean literally measure the furniture and then convert it to a 1/4 inch scale kind of thing?
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, basically what you know, if you're choosing different pieces of furniture and you don't have that, these are existing pieces, if you want to scale a room with existing, you'd have to measure the furniture, and then you'd have to measure the room and convert it to 1/4 inch scale, which is typical industry standard. So you get 1/4 inch scale graph paper, or you use something like Easy Decorator that has a 1/4 inch scale graph. You draw in the perimeter of your room, and then you measure each piece of furniture and convert it to 1/4 inch scale, and then plunk it down in the room where you want to see it. Or you use something like Easy Decorator that has all the furniture pieces already dimensioned in all the typical sizes that you would normally have. I don't know if that's answering the question or not. I mean, but you'd have to do some measurement if you're literally talking about redoing your living room or your bedroom or whatever. You're going to have to take out the tape measure and measure the room to start, and then measure your existing pieces and, you know, position them in the room, bird's eye view.
That sounds great. Well, that was all the questions that came in. Thank you again, Cheryl, for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you also to all of the teachers who joined us. And thank you for sticking with us through my couple of technical difficulties getting that video going. As I mentioned, if you do want the recording, the entire recording of this whole webinar will be landing in your inbox in about 1 hour. And then also there's the survey and that certificate of attendance that will be coming in as well. So thank you.
I wanted to mention, if the teachers wanted to contact me directly, I think you might have mentioned that or whatever. I don't have any problem with my, you know, if they think of a question later on. So.
Yeah, that would be amazing. So if you do want to contact Cheryl, I don't know if you put your email on that link of list of web links from the handout. But if not, if you do want to reach out to her, email that engage@Nasco Education, respond to the GoToWebinar emails, and I'll be sure to introduce the two of you and let you have that conversation. So,
that sounds good.
I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you again at one of these webinars. Our April webinar will be on cookie lesson plan, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you back again then. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.